Hey, welcome to the Dugout, man. We got a show for you today, man. We being me and my buddy Dan Carlson from Canada. Now, HR got with me last week after the other show, and they said, hey, you can't be calling that guy a sidekick. He's a lot more than a sidekick. He's a co-host. Are you?
I'm not a little cheese.
You a big cheese?
Maybe. I don't know. I like cheese.
Yeah, buddy. Hey, let me tell you something. You know, we have what do we call it? Well, we asked everybody on our YouTube station to send us a joke. Well, man, we're getting a lot of them. You know, we're getting a lot of them. Here's one for you, Dan.
Cheers.
How about the pop fly? Forget about it, Dan. It's over your head.
Wah, wah, wah.
Okay, Dan, let's get on with the program here. We got Mike Knowles. And tell us a little bit about Mike Knowles, Daniel.
Mike Knowles is the chairman of the Florida Half Century. He's a retired high school teacher. He's a husband of 51 years. And getting to know Mike a little bit prior to the show, I can tell you if he was a military guy, you'd say this is one very decorated soldier. He has had quite an amazing history. And he's the Hall of Fame for coaching excellence, for being an outstanding official, and for his Hall of Fame softball career. So it's a great honor, Mike, to have you here today. Welcome to the Dugout.
Thank you so much, Dan and Ed both. It's a pleasure to be here.
If Mike, can you explain to the listeners what's the Florida Half Century? What is it?
Well, we are a 50 and over softball group. We are the largest half century, which means 50. As a matter of fact, last December we took a young man by the name of Hugh Brotherton into our Hall of Fame. He's 91 years old.
Wow.
And still playing and still running for everybody else. So we have people that come from all over the country to Florida. I was talking with Terry Hennessy, the executive director of SSUSA, on the drive over across the state today. And he was saying they have a lot of snowbirds from Northern California that come down here just to play softball, of course, in the wintertime, because the weather up there is not very good. Now we have these divisions of 50 up, 60, 65, 70, 74 plus, 78 plus. In most years, this year we don't have a 78 plus league bracket, but we do have a very large 70s bracket, over 30 teams. We have, last year we had 210 teams. We dropped down to about 200 this year. But we'll have more that add on, will join us during the course of the year.
There's a lot to talk about in Florida Half Century, how it works, you know, what it's going to look like in the future, some of the challenges you as the big man in the chair have to deal with. But let's go back a little bit and talk about the history. How did it begin?
Well, thank you for asking that. It really got me doing some research. When you become chairman, you inherit boxes and boxes and boxes of information from past years. And of course, we have a lawyer on our board. We have a 10-member board. They're all very busy. John Kirch is our Area 2 director and also a lawyer. And he told me how many years back we should go back for tax purposes and all that. And also for people to make sure some guys come in and play and stay out 5 or 6 years. So we have a huge database, by the way, of course. And my wife does that. My wife Sherry's also a retired teacher and does a wonderful job of that. Without her, I couldn't do this job. Florida Half Century is a combination of 3 different organizations from years past. I'm talking with several of the previous chairmen that are still alive, and a couple of the old secretaries that are still alive. We found out that they back in the 60s and 70s, they basically were 3 organizations. You had the Seniors Softball World Series group, but what they want to do is really only have one huge tournament per year. And then Terry Hennessy once again told me that going into the 70s, they had a gentleman out of California and a gentleman out of Michigan actually start the new SSUSA so they had more national tournaments. You also had a group of what was called the Florida 60 Plus group that came with the Florida Half Century by the late 1980s. And that formed Florida Half Century ASA, Amateur Softball Group. And the very first of those chairmen was a man by the name of Ron Bechtel. I never had the opportunity to meet the guy. But he had a 5-member board in the early years, and I guess his right-hand man was a man by the name of John Townley. A lot of people know that guy.
You see, what year was that? That it started, 1982?
The information I gathered is February 1986.
86.
Yeah, February 1986. Now, guys, remember, this is I'm information going way back, and I've got a lot of paraphernalia in front of me from there were things sitting back and forth with these people. But a lot of it, again, people are trying to remember. And I'm 74, most of these guys are a whole lot older than I am. So your memory goes a little bit. So the information I've got right here basically is Mr. Townley answering a letter saying that by February 1986, he had already registered over 1,300 players. So that means by that time, they had probably 50 or 60 teams. And we've grown to 200 plus last year. And then Mr. Beckman must not have been the chairman for very long. He turned that over to Townley in the 1990s, and I found out from another source that he was the chairman of the organization for well over 10 years. So the longest standing chairman in Florida Health Century. And after that, the list goes on to a man by the name of Jerry Sheets, who was on there a fairly short time. And then Mike Pilber took over in 06, was only the chairman for about 3 years. Hank Schumann, 210 to 212. He had some illnesses, so he ended up getting out on his own. Mike Correa was the vice chairman. Ken Chairman was elected again and was in that office about 4 years.
Who was that, Ken?
Mike Correa, after Hank. And then I took over, I was elected in November of 2016, took over in January of 2017. And I'm in my fourth term.
And how did that go about? Why did you, how did Mike Knowles, the coach, get into being involved with the Half Century?
Interesting question, because I retired from teaching and coaching officially. I still do a lot of clinics and coaching on the side, that sort of thing. In 2011, Wayne Berryhill, who used to be the Area 2 director, was designated as a commissioner in 2013. And he called me and asked me if I'd be interested in taking his position. That's how I got on the board as the Area 2 director, which is Southwest Florida. We have 4 areas. Area 1, Southeast Florida, we're Area 2. Area 3 is Tampa St. Pete north and west of I-75 all the way to the Panhandle. And Area 4 is more like, Orlando, all the way north, east to about Vero Beach, and then all the way north through South Georgia. And we have 3 or 4 Georgia teams that come down. And God bless them, we have a handful of guys that come all the way down to South Carolina that were basically brought in several years ago when they were in their 50s. And even though they're in another state, we allow them to come down because they hardly ever miss a term. They love Florida Health Century. And as long as they want to keep coming, we're going to allow them to come.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool event. It's as somebody who participates in Florida Half Century, it's well organized. It's got a lot of cool things. Back when you first came in, though, did you walk in? Did you find it was pretty organized? Did you see opportunities of things that you would like to change, move forward with? What was it like when you first got there?
Again, another good question. As you know, I was a head football coach in a couple of different schools, and a defensive coordinator, assistant head coach for 10, 12 years before that. I think anytime you come into an organization, you take what they already do well and you try to build on it and pretty much put your name on it. And being an educator, probably a little more disciplined, a little more organized than maybe some people. And I know when I took over the board, I told them the way I look at the board was like a team with a head coach with a bunch of assistant coaches. And I felt they already had a great organization. It was already, there was about 130 teams when I took over. But one thing I wanted to make it easier for people to get registered. For instance, if you're playing at 8 o'clock Saturday morning, if you're a manager and you need help, you got a guy that you just met, you want to get him eligible. If you overnight your information to me Friday morning, my wife and myself are going to make it happen so we can play Saturday.
That's a big deal.
That wasn't done in years past. If you didn't get your information in 2 weeks prior, and I knew that when I became the area director, and I just wanted to make it easier. And the managers and the teams appreciate that. They really do. Also, I didn't like some of the language. We cleaned a lot of that up.
Was that a gross cursing?
Absolutely
On the field
not.
you're talking about?
Absolutely not. Eddie is a class
Now that
guy.
HR works both ways, but
I will share real quick, just a side. Eddie and I go back almost 50 years. And I played on his 35 team, I played on his 40 team, I played on some of his 50 traveling teams. So we know each other. He is a classy man, extremely well educated with a great vocabulary.
It's colorful, isn't it?
yeah, it's amazing what people say that not on an oath.
But no, never had a problem with him. But I just felt like when I started playing in 1998, and in Florida Central, you're allowed to play in the year that you turn 50. So my birthday was December, so I got to play the whole year. I was 49. But we brought the kids and the wives, and it was great. And I just noticed through the years that that was depleted a bit. So I remember telling the board, we're going to clean the language up. We're going to clean up some of the yelling and screaming at umpires and things like that. And so we have. And we have occasional problems, not many. We deal with it rapidly, fairly. I suspend, say, if Eddie was to get in a problem. I would call Eddie and say, you're suspended. The board will make the determination. The chairman does not vote unless there's a tie with the board. And in 6.5 years, I voted one time. One time. So the board will get together through emails, of course, or phone calls, and they decide. And a lot of us are dependent on somebody's past. It's the first time they've ever gotten in any trouble. And people, 9 times out of 10, they know they just lost it. If you've got repeat offenders, obviously the penalty is going to be more.
So this is just as far as like saying, like just cursing and swearing during the tournament, or what?
Well, the F-bombs are automatic.
Yeah.
Because again, back to the kids and the grandkids, they don't hear that at home probably, they don't need to hear it on the field. And we're all educated to some degree. We can find different words to use. Now, if the guy's out there on the field and he's talking to a member, he hits a line drive or a close play at first, and he's called out. And if he yells something out or not yell, if he just says, and only he and the umpire hears it, the umpire says, "Hey, what's your language?" But if you want to scream out, that's just inappropriate.
Yeah, well, I have a habit of if I pop up, I'll say maybe the F word, and the umpire does exactly what you just said. And
we train our umpires to really understand that humans make mistakes. Preventive officiating would be, hey, what's your language?
Now that said, this is a little off track, but I only have been thrown out of one Florida half-century tournament in my 27 years. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I said, and you're the grand poobah of all referees, umpires, and I said to this guy, I said, that is absolutely the worst call I've ever seen in my career. And he threw me out. So I don't know if he was basing that on my long career or whatever, but he threw me out for saying that's the worst call I've ever seen.
How loud did you say it?
Well, I say everything loud.
Well,
I can tell you, everybody heard it.
That's probably the case.
Okay, well.
A lot of it depends, again, on demeanor. A lot of times Ed says things and he's laughing at the same time.
This is true.
A lot of times.
This is true.
He'll say something demeaning, but he's laughing about it so everybody knows it's a joke.
Yeah, well, if I ever say anything demeaning to anybody openly, I'm kidding.
This is on the record.
Well, that's a true statement.
Well, now, we were at a practice game one time, when I was coaching at Satellite Beach. We were playing over there in, what was it? There's only two fields out there.
Yeah, Hedgecock Field.
Yeah, we were playing there, and you got into it with one of our own players.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe. Was that my son or what?
No, it wasn't your son.
Oh.
It was somebody that had been loafing, you didn't like that, so you went over.
Dennis Willis. Sorry, Dennis, you're
Not
my
Dennis,
buddy. But,
not Dennis. Dennis is a lot bigger than that guy.
Oh, it was a little guy.
It was a little guy.
Well, I usually mess with big guys.
I know. Ed likes to sometimes he'd come into third base, act like he's sliding, act like he's falling over somebody. He does that on purpose.
Come on, Mike, I'm running the ball.
Hey, when you and I, Mike, were talking before, you had mentioned that you do some different things with the umpires. Is that what you're referring to, or do you teach them another way? What else do you do with the umpires?
I officiated college baseball 25 years, college basketball 20, high school ball over 40. And being a coach, an official, both I can see both sides. I really can. So we talk to our officials every week of small things. We have every Saturday morning, 7:15, at each of the sites there's an umpire in chief, and quite often, most of the time, I'll hand 2 or 3 things through email to our big umpire chief, who's Corey Warwick out of Orlando area, and he'll get to him with his UICs and go over things like stressing the unsafe slot second base, stressing how do you handle appeals, because almost all appeals are done by the team. We don't want umpires handling appeals unless they're asked to. Mm-hmm. Because I always don't play defense for the team, don't play offense for the team. Maybe the teams do that. But we'll have a big clinic in Polk County the last Saturday in February. We've been doing this for years now. We bring in all 80, 90 umpires, and we have a day-long clinic. Feed them lunch. This year, the Polk County Sports Marketing Group paid for lunch for the guys. It was great. And we're right there at West Side Fields. And then we do the small mini clinics every Saturday morning for each tournament all through the year, so the 24 of those. And then we have regional clinics again in September. We'll have 5 of those. So now the guys from Jacksonville or Lake City or Miami or Naples only have to go maybe an hour's drive rather than a 3-4 drive. And we talk about fraudulent rules, because we do things differently. We do have that unsafe slide rule at second and/or third. We haven't had anybody taken out at second base. Dan, you just started playing with us. You'll notice this. You don't see contact anymore like you did years ago.
No.
When did that come in?
I started that.
You started that.
I started that because that's a baseball rule. That's a baseball mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And we started doing that in college baseball some 20 years ago. And then we carried that to high school ball, and I brought that to Florida Century because I saw guys get taken out at second base, and it's ridiculous. You don't need that.
No.
So there are things, a guy can always slide into a base, for instance, or he can veer off. But if you're going to go into a base, you can't go up, stand up, you can't put your hands up. You can't take a guy out. You're out, and the guy closest to home is out also, so don't play. And if the guy's getting his foot up there above the knee, he'd probably be ejected as well, because we don't need that in our game.
So you came in 2016, so 2016 is when the sliding rule came in?
17.
17.
17, when I took over, exactly. We had our first clinic in February, and that's when we put it in. And the players love it now. They know they're not going to number one, stops the fights, a lot of fights.
Yeah.
And so we just don't have any contact. If the guy does it, he's probably doing it on purpose, and he's going to pay the penalty.
Now, what about the net? Did you bring the net into?
Wayne and I did that. The first time I was a site director was actually Lee County at Lehigh. They have 2 fields that are called Veterans Park. And this would have been in 2016, early in 16. And I saw a guy get hit right between the eyes. Wayne and I have been talking about using it because he and I both played in the Venice Wednesday night 50 over league for several years already at that time. And we started using the screen because the guy that made them, Pat, near Pat.
Yeah, I know.
And so he made one for us, but we were having a hard time getting pitchers at night. And we had, they still have a great league. We had 5 gold teams, these are all A and B players. And then 12 teams on the silver, 16 over. And so because we were having a hard time getting pitchers, we started using that league. And it worked. People just weren't getting hurt. And so right after that guy got hit, thank God, there were 3 EMTs in the stand happened to watch the game. They kept him alive till the ambulance got there.
Wow.
And he's okay. Still okay.
He's okay.
You almost died?
He almost died.
Where did he get hit in the head?
Right here, right in the middle.
Man.
So we actually had a board meeting the next month, and Wayne and I just walked in just very loudly, speaking getting loud, and said, we've got to use the screen. And we talked the board into a 3-month trial, and I knew once we got him on the field, we'd never take him off because of the legality reasons. And so, obviously, the first year, people didn't like him. Oh, you take him out of my game defense. Well, they're saving their life. And you see these Well, you're a young man.
Yep.
You saw balls hit right by the pitcher. Where did he get his hand up?
That was part of the strategy. With
Yes.
if you're playing a really good team, especially if you're playing a 5-man infield, whatever.
Yes.
Back up the middle is the closest
Okay.
way to get it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that it's worked, and I'm just surprised that more of the national organizations don't use
That's
it.
exactly what I was going to say. Now, the ISSA allows you to; it's an option.
Yes.
But they're playing with fire,
Yes,
not
sir.
having the nets in the senior league for sure.
I
The
think,
bats are crazy.
yes, you're right. I think the main reason, again, we're not in to make money. We have money coming in, money going out. And so we're not for profit organization. These national groups need to make money. And if they got a big tournament and they're using, like say Vegas, they probably use 16, 18, 20 fields at a time. That means you'd have to buy a screen for each of the places. And then if you're going to start there, you're going to have to do it at all your qualifiers.
But you can make it optional. Therefore, the team would have to bring it. So
There you go.
and that's what they did with the ISSA.
Okay.
And some teams will. And I just think it's got to be the way to go. I mean, yeah, but you're absolutely right about the money.
Yeah. Well, we didn't even think about the money. We just did it. It's just one of the things that had to happen.
Just how much is the screen?
Oh, they go about $250, $300.
Yeah, about $300.
And did you?
I think one is $325. I just bought one and it broke in a month.
Yeah.
I was in a different league before in Canada, and they messed around with different sizes, they were much larger than the ones that in the 4.5 century.
We did too. Ed, and I said Pat's last name is Vitamin. And Pat was with a great team called the Legues. They were one of the best 15 over and 60 over teams in this country for years. And Pat lived right there in Venice. He was a college professor, and he invented this screen. And so when we first started, we would use the practice screens, but they're too wide.
They're too wide.
And so
Yeah.
Pat made one that's about like this.
Shoulder width.
Yeah.
Shoulder width and 6 feet high.
Now they're 6'3".
Okay.
The first ones are 6. The ones that you mentioned, you bought one that broke already. We just spent some. We just bought 15 more of them that are sturdier. The pipes
From
are
who?
sturdier.
I bought the one that Pat sold. He sold his company to somebody, and you bought different ones that come apart differently.
Yeah.
That looks pretty. Who built those?
Those first ones that was the best one that Pat ever made. And then they started again. He got out of the business. And so I'll get you the number. Wayne Berryhill has Wayne orders the screens for us.
Because I ordered it, and it looked good. And you know the other one, the metal ones that you had, I ordered one of them, and a couple guys around here ordered it. And in 3 months they were all dinged up. They were done. They were bent.
Yeah.
And so I just gave mine to a friend of mine, and then I ordered one from this new company that Pat, sold his to. And it was great looking. It was, but a couple of hits to the bottom of it, and probably Dan's the one that hit him. He won't admit it.
It's easy.
Does he hit the ball that hard?
Oh, he hits it hard, dude. Look how hard you used to hit it. Not 50.
I know.
That boy's only 50.
Yeah.
That's why he's a rookie.
When I was 50 years old, Dan, I was still benching about 320. I hit the ball pretty hard.
Wow.
But
Big number.
I weighed about 20 pounds more now too. I was very strong every day. That's the only way anybody had me to play because I hit the ball hard. So.
Yeah.
I was his utility guy. I could run. I could play in position.
Mike was a great average hitter, and he could hit the gaps for sure. He was fast, but like us all, we ain't so fast anymore.
Nope.
Now Dan's still fast, and I told Dan, this is a Mike Knowles interview, but Dan, I told him he could be the next Dave Reed. That's how good I think he could be.
Wow.
That's pretty high praise. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll keep trying.
Yes, it is. Eddie's not live about things like that. So I'll have to make sure I get over what you played a little bit more. But Dave, if you were to put as much time into it as Dave, then you could be a great one.
Yeah.
But all the great ones put a lot of time in it, like this guy.
Yeah.
A lot of time. When I was living here at Satellite Beach, not only did we play league ball together, like on Sundays and stuff, and we played during the week at night some, and we'd hit together almost every day.
It still hits regularly, twice a week, Ed?
Yeah, twice a week.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
Another reason why I said that I quit playing when I became the chairman, because I'm not an avid golfer. I'm still a 5 handicap. But you get older, there's not enough time to put the kind of practice time in for both of them.
Yeah.
That's right. You gotta choose.
You gotta choose one.
Well, I don't know a lot about golf, but it's 5, pretty good.
That's pretty.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. I actually in Bradenton, I won the amateur city championship for the super seniors, 70 and over just a couple months ago.
Super seniors, they have they dress that up and make it look a super senior.
Yes,
You're
sir.
an old dude.
That's right. One of the reasons I won, it was 2-day affair, because all those guys got retired the second day, and I'm in pretty good shape. So I played better on Sunday than I did on Saturday. I ended up winning about 3 shots.
Cool.
So let me say, there was another one. The count changed before you, or did you? So you were involved in the no sliding, in implementing it, the net implemented, and the screens. And I called it the net with the screens and the count. When the one thing I always loved about the Florida Half Century, got that full count. And I knew eventually it would come in, and finally it did. Were you responsible for that? So
No, I was not.
Oh, okay.
But back to the umpires. Another thing we do, and I'm very pleased about. Again, I mentioned my baseball background, and we instituted several baseball mechanics to make it a better call game for the player. I'll give you an example. Back when, in my day when I hit the ball hard, real hard, playing with Ed in the early 50s, it used to drive me crazy. I had a shot, a line drive between left center fielder and left fielder. A guy dives for it, and you expected the plate umpire to call it. That's a softball mechanic. So baseball mechanic is the base umpire who's at least 80 or 90 feet closer. He makes that call.
Well, that makes sense.
So if and by the way, we never run up on the line. You'll notice that in your games.
Yeah.
We don't put him because, again, think about how hard a big left-hander, Ed, what's the guy?
Ed our Starcher.
Starcher.
Big Ed Starcher.
6'4",
Shout
6'5",
out.
270. Hits BBs. So we don't want anybody on the line. So if there's nobody on the base, we put our first base umpire on the right shoulder of the first baseman for protection. Okay, then if somebody gets on, we move them more inside, but we never on the dirt.
Yeah.
And now.
So you got to that level of detail.
Oh yeah. And we do what we call the V, which is a baseball mechanic, because now if you have a fly ball from the right fielder to the left fielder, that is the base umpire's call. Okay. Only if the play's down the line, if it's a plate umpire. Only. And again, we never put the base umpire on the line for protection.
Smart.
And because of that, we work with them at every clinic. We constantly are reminding, and it's harder for guys who didn't play baseball or didn't umpire baseball for them to learn it. But once they do, it becomes secondhand.
Yeah.
So if we've got guys who's umpire a lot of baseball, it's an easy transition.
How do you get it? How do you get to become an umpire? You just go up to them, feel their head, and if they're warm, you become an umpire or what?
Well, some of those 70-year-old guys like you, thank you.
I was just a joke, umpires, if you're listening. I know you guys are great. Actually, umpires are pretty good in the half century.
Well, they're nice people. Like I often talk to the umpires on the way in or out when they're going to the box, and I've never met anybody who wasn't very personable.
We talk about being friendly, being professional at all times. Don't talk too much.
Yeah.
Because we get too friendly, then you end up making a call against somebody. They can take it personally.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I'm famous with the umpires. You obviously know.
Oh yeah.
But in my first, let's say, 10 years, they probably hated me. And then they find, hey, this guy's just clowning around. He's just an idiot. And so now I got a lot of buddies in the umpiring world that they still strike my ass out. But
you make it fun.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. Again, I learned a lot about Ed and guys like Ed by playing with him. If you ever played with Ed, you would love him to death. This man would give you the shirt off his back.
He would.
And literally has, especially youngsters. But when you play against him, you don't always understand his tactics. Try to get in the head a little bit.
That's a good word, tactics.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they try to do.
I had to tell, it was playing with a great team called Hollis for several years. And I started with one of the top 2 or 3 teams called the Blast, over the West Coast over there, south of Tampa. And it had some really great players. A couple of them, but you all said it in, I said, hey, the guy's trying to get in your head. I said, just laugh at him, and he'll leave you alone. But if you get mad at him, he's not going to stop. Yeah, that's a tactic. But back to the umpires, the guys will apply. A lot of them will start working their leagues, and we pay as much as anybody. Our umpires as much as anybody.
What do they get paid?
They make $30 a game.
Nice, man. I used to make 8 and 7.
Oh yeah.
Inflation is in everything, man.
Well, I started in college doing intramurals, making $2 a game.
Man, you're not even as old as I am.
No. But the guy contacts me through our website, 40th Century Softball.org, O-R-G, and then I'll send them their name and their number to our umpire in chief, and then he'll contact them and see what kind of experience they have, and they have to come to a clinic before they can work. Sometimes I'm asked to do, the guy misses, like he has to work, we can't, or he's got a personal problem, he can't come to the clinic, and I'll do a makeup myself for them. The next tournament on Saturday morning for a couple hours on Sunday morning, then they go on umpire after that. So we work with them.
Sounds like you got a good system. When you got to this position in the 4.5 century, it was already going, it was busy, it was big, or whatever, and you brought with you a very unique skill set to the half century. When you started applying this, was there a specific challenge that it was out of your wheelhouse, or did you see, what was it like when you got there?
Well, I had to, number one, have to sell the board on my ideas. I had to have the support of the board, the 9 other people on the board. And because of my background in education and coaching and officiating, it was easier to sell them on that. And then to sell what I wanted to do to the umpire. My first umpire in chief was Brett Porch out of Orlando. Brett played high school and college football. And some, the old, oh gosh, what was the team out of Orlando? Ed?
Which one?
Football. It was a pro team, kind of like a semi-pro team. Spurrier coached him. Steve Spurrier coached him.
That was, I had season tickets to Razzle, the Dazzle, what was it?
Something strange like that. Anyway, he played for them.
Brett did?
Yep.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he sure did. And he played for UCF back in the day. So sold him on it, and then we had to sell him. So the umpires on it, all making those changes. The biggest thing, I think, the screen was inevitable because of the safety thing. Something else we're doing now, Ed, you mentioned about some of the things that we started a year and a half ago was bat testing.
Yeah, Dan's upset about that. He lost about 3 bats in that, didn't you? No, I'm just kidding.
But we try to make people feel good about what the other team is doing. If you got a guy, 5'7", 150 pounds, hitting the ball in the lights, something's probably wrong. But not always. Yeah, you remember a guy named Harold Jones?
Oh yeah, a good buddy of mine, Harold.
Yeah, Harold was not much bigger than that.
I called him Mini-Me.
But Harold, unbelievable bat speed.
Yeah.
He played for me when I started the Blast.
And he can't even throw overhand. He throws underhand.
He throws underhand.
Most people throw overhand.
Yep, that's right. But probably one of the 2 fastest guys I ever saw in softball.
Me?
Harold. Guys like that are 1 in a million, pretty much. So what we do is test the bats. We checked research with companies, and a college professor out of Washington, I actually talked with him on the phone, and we came to the conclusion that these senior bats at 150 compression is fair. Anything below that is unfair, unsafe. Yeah. So we don't call them illegal, we call them unsafe. Yeah. One thing though that we're going, but some guys say, well, a guy can still, you test it, and you test out at 170, he can go to somebody and they can take the top off and get it all shaved. And I said, well, if somebody wants to do that, hit the ball 20 feet further, I don't know. So
just wearing a bat out for no reason, they would break enough as it is. All of them.
You know the truth, and they're expensive.
Yeah, it's crazy. What do they call that when they
shaving it?
Shaving the bat.
Mm-hmm.
It just costs you money. It costs you money to do it, and it costs you money because it's going to break. I mean, with these bats, you just use them. I got 6 bats, and I use them, a little bit each.
Well, you have to alternate.
Yeah.
So Dan, when I used one bat the whole season. I was a base hitter, and so I wasn't trying to hit the ball. we were beating over the fence. But that's a story in itself of why I kind of changed my whole philosophy of hitting. Playing with Bruce Meek, I told Ed this story about playing with Bruce Meek. He changed, and that's why I became such a high average hitter.
You were swinging with power before, and then you played with Bruce.
Well, I could hit it out. I could hit, I'd hit maybe one home run every other game. And after Bruce also lives in Bradenton, and so we played against each other as young men, and then played together some in tournament ball. Not a whole lot because Bruce was at the top. I was not the top of the top player. I was a very good player, but not like Bruce. He was a pro type player. But we took batting practice together weekly, and we played in the same league together for several years. And here's the story, really, is that my job was to get on base. I batted leadoff, and Bruce was second. And I learned through drills with Bruce in infield about putting the bucket 3-4 hole with a 5-6 hole, and before the screens, I mean, my best shot ever to was up the middle. And that's what I worked on. And I took a lot of walks, and I positioned my rear foot was at the middle of the plate, very rare, but that allowed me to take that 2-strike pitch, that high outside pitch, and take it to right field. And those are the things I learned by hitting with Bruce.
Yeah, well, let me just diverge a little bit. I guess it's diversion, but what I want to, I was talking to, who was it, Nasenko, and we were talking about the steals, and we were talking about how I had my Samatellis team placed steals, and I believe you were there pitching.
I pitched, yes.
Because everybody else was scared. Well, I won't say scared. Chuck Dice ain't scared of nothing, but he said, I ain't pitching against them guys. They just want to hit it out. I ain't pitching. And you stepped up and said, I'll pitch. Yeah. Okay. Now, what happened in that, see if you remember, this is my memory, and sometimes it's not as good. Like, I don't even remember, already playing with Canaveral, but I remember this situation because you were pitching, and I admired that because you had the guts to pitch. Those clowns, I wasn't pitching. I can tell you, those clowns, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but they could hit it. But there was a guy, and I think it was Craig Elliott, I'm not really sure, but you walked him twice, man. He warned you the first time. And I came ballistic. I don't care who they were. You know what I mean? I started getting.
I do remember that.
Yeah, remember that? And I said, and then he was like, next time I'm coming, I'm gonna take that guy's head off. And I forget what I said.
He was upset because he was being walked?
Yeah, he was like totally pissed. And I said, do you think that guy wants to walk you? I mean, we didn't come here to walk you or to win this game. We want to play the best in the country.
This was a benefit game.
Yeah.
Benefit game.
Yeah, it was not a win-loss thing. They were touring the country. We're playing the bet,
And using their balls.
Yeah, they're hitting. They got balls. They got like
Pot
must have been 12 dozen behind. They came out and put 12 dozen behind the backstop. And we're just the A team. We were a good A team. I don't know. We may have been a B team then. I don't know. Sam Metellus was a really good team, and we just wanted to play the best. And some of my guys said, I don't just want to get beat up by these guys, but most of us said, hey, we want to go out there and like play the best. And I'm glad we did, right?
Oh, it was fun.
That was a story I remember, and I couldn't remember, but I think it was Craig Elliott. And if it wasn't Craig Elliott,
it was because I played against Craig when he was with Miami.
Okay,
with the
so it was Craig Elliott.
It was Craig because I remembered him. I was playing with Roland Walker and Lincoln Merker. We were the #1 A team in the country. And they came and played in the King Neptune tournament in Sarasota. And we played them, we beat them. In the semis, they came back and beat us. Well, they were the top major team. And that was along that time when you had A and B. B was the lowest one. But as an A team, we had great defense, great athletes. But they, we had maybe 3 or 4 home run hitters. That was it. Yeah,
A teams could beat a super major team occasionally.
Occasionally. Well, how we beat them, we played them against the win.
Like Burnings, they could beat. You could step up and beat someone.
Well, we went down to Miami. They invited us down the following month, and even paid our way because Jerry's owned a couple of hotels down there and stuff. So we stayed in, and I remember playing against him at that time. So when he was with Steels, I recognized him.
Yeah, then Zimla House. Well, we're off track. We're going to get back. I got us off track, but I had that story. Then
we've all got 1,000 stories. They're fun.
Yeah, but where are you at, Dan?
Well, I have another random off-topic question, kind of. This 4.5 century thing is actually, this is a well-run, smooth organization. Are there other states that have something like this?
Oh yeah, Texas has a big organization. California has a Northern California and Southern California group. Michigan has a good one. All states have century, just nothing, not even close to the numbers we have. Terry Hennessy, in my discussion with him again, as I said, I'm talking this morning, and he was saying it's not even close.
What would be the second largest, Texas or California?
He said he thought Texas, probably about 130. Northern California.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Do you talk to the leaders of those other organizations at all?
No. I tell you, the people that call me are those that are trying to start up new organizations. They want to know what kind of rules we use. They want to know how the rules are used for the screen. They want to know the rules about the unsafe slide. Things like that. But these big groups never call me now.
You know what would be cool, and think about this. It may be cost prohibitive nowadays, but it'd be cool if we could have the leagues send their top 5 teams, like, and play in Texas, and maybe
centrally located,
yeah, or no, well, yeah, but and then the next time they'd come and play us in Florida, like we did in counties. We used to do that.
Oh yeah.
In Brevard, we play the 40 and over league in Melbourne against the 40 and over league in Cocoa,
and
at different times. So I don't know if it's possible, but that would be. I mean, it's kind of getting crazy, all these tournaments. I have so many world championships. It's kind of, I just we call them world championships, but the national championships. But I mean, it would be fun to have Florida half century against the Texas half century. And see who's the best. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
I'm all about playing more ball. Let's do it.
Yeah. The thing about what people love about Florida half century, but before every time before we've instituted a new rule, like limiting runs in it, or talking. There was a talk before, about 10 years ago, about limiting home runs. I go talk to the top 50 teams and ask them, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because we don't want to run those guys off. Florida half century is fun for them. There's like it's 14. They play all over, all the time. So we want them to just not take it too serious. Everybody wants to win. We want to be competitive, but it's not the end of the world. We play for T-shirts until December.
Yeah.
And this is something else we started also. Eddie mentioned about something else. We used to give like long-sleeve shirts or collared shirts if you won the state championship. I got a couple of those myself because my team, the last one, won 2 of them. But the last 3 years we've been giving out rings, and it's not the real expensive rings, but it's nice.
Well, it's better. I think that's a great one that you started.
And I got to give the credit to Wayne Berryhill came up with that idea, and it really is about the same price as buying a collared shirt or maybe another T-shirt.
No, here, but let me segue into something because I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know why the state tournament was actually started?
I do not.
Yeah, and you know why I know? Because it was either Rudy or Bruce that we were talking, and they were complaining that in December they couldn't get any teams there.
Ah, okay.
And yes, I'm taking credit for this, folks. I am. I said that Bruce or Rudy, I forget which one it was at the time. I think it was actually Bruce for some reason.
Well, and I saw their names. I met them when I first started.
Yeah, I know those guys.
Bruce Fisher and Rudy Haas. Does that sound right?
I just know Bruce and Rudy, but yeah, they start. But let me get on it. So I told Bruce.
Strauss, it's right here. Bruce
Strauss. Yeah, that's good. But I said to him, and I ran all these tournaments, and I was AAA district director for 25 years. I ran tons and tons. I said, dude, if you make it a state tournament, they will come. and they did come. And now, we went through it, and everybody, because it's at that time they were trying to grow the league, and they were trying. I don't know. I mean, it's what I would say is they want to make money on that tournament, but the teams are running. But now there's restrictions on that, But the teams come because it's a state tournament, and they do everything is focused now around getting to that state tournament. But it was just put in there to increase the number of teams.
Well, that was a great idea that you had. Congratulations.
With that,
well, we've really flown with that then through the years, and we've changed qualifications. That started when I got on the board.
But you know how that started, right?
Of course, because of Hollis. Of course, I know that.
Yeah, that's right. You were there.
What happened was Hollis.
Well, tell us about that. Yeah.
Well, they won the state tournament like 8 years in a row. But what he did, the rules said a guy has, and still the same way. Dan Carlson has to be on the roster by October the 1st before be eligible to play in the state tournament. But you have to have so many tournaments. Back then, you didn't have any number of tournaments. But they were on the roster before October, and Ed did that. He was smart. He played by the rules. Mm-hmm. And then all these guys, 10 new guys we never see all year, showed up for the state tournament. And now, I will tell you, the Blast played themselves a couple of times the first couple of years.
But you guys won the state a couple of times, right?
Twice, yeah, we went twice.
Yeah, I was going to get into that too. Do you have a list of who won? Good. Let me go, since you brought that up. The first state tournament was in 2002, I believe, and
sounds about right.
That's when the Strikers, the team that I was on with Miles, I was not the coach yet, and we won in 2003. And they used to be televised. That's something we ought to get back on if we could.
Streaming, maybe.
Well, streaming would be perfect.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, streaming would be perfect. No longer. I forget what it was, Sun Sports or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It was Sun Sports.
Yeah, I posted the one that I had, but we were on there twice. Mm-hmm. But we won it in 2002, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. And you ask why not 9? Did you ask why not 9?
I do.
They wouldn't let us play.
There you go.
Of course, you probably know that, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, here's the story, Dan. We said, okay, this is what I was there as you, and we're saying to the board, and almost all those guys are going. So, guys that Wayne was on that board. He's the only one. Everybody else is new. Great board. These guys are fantastic people and work hard. But we're trying to say, make it harder on Hollis to come back and win again. Give other team. I'm being honest.
Yeah, be honest. That's what it's all about.
But again, I had the Blast, and we were second. One more year, they won it again, and we played them tough in the finals.
Well, you had a great team, dude.
Yeah.
We always had. I mean, it wasn't like it was easy winning these tournaments.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
No. But anyway, so I said, well, we've got to come up with a limit. And then the secretary at that time was Dwayne Jones. And Dwayne said, well, who's going to write down every time a team plays or a player plays? See, Dan, this last weekend, your roster was filled out by your manager. Mm. And then half the year we have players signed in, but a couple, 3 months before the state tournament to get them used to it. And the first year we have every player signed in because they have new players.
Right.
And so, and I spoke up, I said, my wife and I will do it. And they said, okay. So that's when we came up with it, 6 for the team and 4 for an individual. And that first year, Sherry and I would sit down after every tournament with the rosters and go through. And
120 teams you do that with?
Well, each tournament.
You get an app for that, dude. Now.
Well, we did. Well, she actually made one herself.
Really? Good for you.
Yeah. She's a very smart lady.
Yeah, that's the first thing I'd have thought of.
Yeah. And then when I became chairman, we ended up with a new secretary, and he decided, Greg Hazel, secretary now, and he started doing it. He still does it.
And she's done it with an app or what?
Yeah. He's developed his own program. Yeah. But what we did though, another reason why we're getting so much bigger is because we made it real easy for guys my age, 70 and over. Because for them, we said, okay, they only have to have 3 team tournaments and 2 individuals. Mm. makes it real easy because a large number of our guys are snowbirds.
Yeah, right.
And so, but if they come back and they play in a couple of tournaments, or maybe a couple of tournaments early in the year before they go, they come back in October, November, they can still play in December. So we make it easy for those guys to play. And that's why we'll have you'll have, in the 60 state tournament, there'll be 70 teams, 70 maybe 70 or so, 75 50 teams.
Is that many, 70 and 60?
Oh, yeah. Well, we've
Is
already
the
had.
league growing from the, are you going to have to expand down to the 40s? I mean.
No, we'll never do that. We don't have enough room for that.
No.
Basically, as far as places to play?
Yes.
Diamonds? Okay.
Yeah. Again, we go to Polk County 14 out of 24 times because they have a lot of good, nice complexes.
That's another segue on it, because back in the day, I remember, because I used to sponsor tournaments. I'd go to these meetings annually, and we'd bid on tournaments, and the team would run it. What was the change there? You were involved in that change?
I was.
Okay, tell us about that.
Again, I've forgotten. I'm glad you asked that. Let's just say your team is Mellow, one Mellow team. Okay? Let's just say Mellow wanted to host a tournament. Well, there's a lot of work going up to that because if you're the manager, you have to make sure you got enough people to keep scoring, to work the table with the commissioner, to help sign in, post scores, all this kind of stuff. And what had happened, Ed, is that the teams would have less and less help, which means they didn't have enough people to run it. Now
I know that situation.
Yes, you do. And so you end up on Sunday with maybe 2 guys show up to keep score. And what if it was a tournament with 60 teams, that'd be 3 different sites, 12 fields at least. Some complex like Overdale has 5. And so we end up with now the umpire having to do it and not getting paid for it.
I think we did that for a while.
Yeah.
The
And so,
keep scoring.
and so that's what we do now. And we pay them $5 extra a game to keep the score. And they'll check, I'm sure, at your games this weekend, umpire will walk over to your dugout and say, okay, I've got 3, how many do you have?
Yeah.
Just to check and announce the score so we don't have any problems. They also keep courtesy runners. The base umpire, the plate guy does that. The base umpire, when the Eddie gets a hit, somebody comes run for him, I'll say, okay, they'll give the number, he writes it on a pad.
Why does somebody come run for me? Just to do it.
We didn't have to.
Yeah.
Didn't have to until recently. So that's the reason why.
So he keeps track of the runners?
Yeah, in case somebody runs twice in one inning, because you know the rule now is you can only run once an inning other than yourself.
So recapping that is, what you're saying is it got so big that a team, usually not familiar with running them, it becomes too complex and too much coordination logistic-wise. It's much simpler for the organization to do.
Yeah, in every single way, including things like using our own credit card at hotels. That became a mess as well with the host teams. So when we run a tournament, we've got, I'm guessing we're going to have 70 next weekend at your 60-plus tournament you can play in. There'll be 3 sites. So I have to have a commissioner or a site director at each one. I go to all the tournaments. I'm visible. I'm there for people to ask me questions. That's what I'm there for. And then
Then they get boring.
well, I'll go to all 3 sites
Okay,
in the morning and all 3 sites in the afternoon as well. And then answer any questions that come up. And then if we have an umpire that drives more than 90 miles, we put them up in the room. We put 2 guys in the room, and so we pay for all that. So we use our credit card for that. And but I put all that in and I hope you get to have it down going on the website and read the chairman's notes. I do that every month. Sometimes I talk about, like last week I talked about the weather getting hot. Make sure you drink enough liquids and not alcohol. And be calm, be cool, have a good time. Don't get too serious, things like that. And I'll talk about experimental rules, all kind of things that come up. So it's a good habit of reading that paper. It's just easier for us to do it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works out well, really. And it's, being in the center of the state probably works out well too.
Oh, absolutely. That's our biggest number. We go, although your guys, you played over in Vero, which was just south of here. I know
Yeah, that's interesting. We hardly ever played in Vero. And Melbourne and Vero probably, we're getting more. We do have at least one tournament in Melbourne, don't we?
No, not now. I tried.
You tried?
But
Melbourne, don't, right? Palm Bay is the one that has the really the fields that you could use Palm Bay and Sebastian. They're close enough.
But I tried, and I contacted their sports marketing guy also, and they only do the grants. So we don't pay for the fields. We bid, which is another thing.
So that's the thing, right? You got to get fields that are free, right? I mean,
but we pay with what we call heads and beds.
Oh yeah, that's exactly.
So we bring in the guys to fill the hotels,
yeah.
And then that makes the sports marketing people look good, and that's how we pay for them.
You go through the sports marketing people then.
Right.
Yeah.
And I went through the guy in Brevard County, and they only do it 1 year at a time, and I have to have 5 years. I have 5 years with guaranteed.
Yeah, the thing, you got economy of scale when you do it. You can't get economy of scale when a team does it. I mean, it makes good business sense, and your organization's got to be somewhat of a business.
Well, yes, and we run it like a business, even though it's a not-for-profit. We run it like a business.
Yeah, I mean that's what you're supposed to do.
You have to.
So, where are we at, Dan? What you got?
Do you have any more? I want to ask Mike a couple other questions about his own personal experience. I mean, you're a Hall of Fame official. I mean, was there one sport that you, as you grew up in this, and maybe tell the listeners, a little bit of a backstory of how you got into it? Is there one sport though that you really enjoyed more than others, and why?
Well, I tell you what, God bless me. I was one of those guys I could play anything as a youngster, but you've heard the phrase "the other side of the street." Well, I was from the other side of the street. My parents worked hard, but we didn't have anything. But I could play ball, and I played baseball, basketball, some football, track when we didn't have baseball games during the season, and then went on, got scholarships in baseball, but didn't have any money. Again, dirt poor, and so that's how I got into officiating, by doing intramural games. So I do basketball and softball and flag football in college, and so I continue that. My wife is 4 years younger than me. When we got married, we were 23 and 19. She had 1 year of school. So I was teaching and coaching at Lakeland High School, started at Haines City, junior high, and went to Lakeland Senior, and doing ball games at night. I was put her through school at Florida Southern, and just continued on with that. And it was funny, I was just talking to some guys I play golf with, and they asked me about, because I'm going to be inducted to the National Hall of Fame in July. National Coaches.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. But that's a lot of that's the right place, right time. It means you're old because you don't get award unless you're older. But you don't think about things like with officiating. I want to be in the Hall of Fame someday, but nobody talks about things like that as a coach, as an official, nothing else. But then I was good enough where I got into college in my 20s, in both sports, and just stayed in that and got involved with the FHSA, is the Florida High School Athletic Association. I got involved with them as an official representing my area, and then I was asked to be the state director for the National Federation of Officials. In 2001, I did that for 10 years. So again, I'm just one of those guys. I could never say no if somebody asked me to do something.
Well, the other thing is, Mike, and don't take this the wrong way, it's all positive, but you have, what do they call it, a stereotype? To me, and I know officials really well because I get to talk to all of them when I play any sport.
You don't say.
But you have that stereotypical look of a official. I don't mean that. I mean
I take it as a compliment.
It is a compliment because you're stoic. Is that the right word?
That's
stoic.
good.
You got to help me, Dan. That's why we pay you the big money.
STOIC.
Oh, now you got spelling.
He's a teacher, man.
Yeah,
come on, you can't put one bus, Mike.
When I was in high school, in a spelling bee, they had to spot me a C to spell cat. But we're off track. But no, really, it's a compliment. You look like and you're very disciplined and straight down, and you look fair. Does it make sense? You look fair.
Well, again, I get back to, I mentioned this several moments ago about the teacher and the coach. I understand both sides of it. I have very high expectations of how kids and coaches are supposed to act. And then the same thing with the professionalism of the official. And one thing that before I went into the Coaches Hall of Fame and FHS Hall of Fame official, I got a chance to talk at a lot of clinics. And I remind these guys, look, if I was talking to the coaches, remember these guys and gals are human. They have human frailties.
Yeah.
Maybe the mom will pass away this morning.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll fight with their husband or wife. Maybe they just lost their dog.
You never know.
And in officials' clinics, the guys remember, coaches have human frailties too. Maybe their grandma just died. Maybe their dog just died. Maybe their wife or their, arguing with their wife.
Mm-hmm.
So always take this into consideration and be fair but firm. And I think players, coaches, everybody, whatever the age group is, kids, adults, they just want to think that you're going to treat everybody the same. I know kids want that way. Kids want structure, and they want discipline.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. And look what it has done for many kids in this background. And those kids learn an awful lot by having great structure.
Well, let's kind of wrap this up. I think we're pretty much close to our time. Is there a story or the worst coach you ever dealt with, the worst athlete you ever dealt with? Is there maybe a funny story or a poignant story? What do you think? Am I putting you too much on the spot?
Well, there's so many things that's happened through the years. I think the one thing that changed my whole life, not really coaching, if I may, not teaching or coaching, but I was it was Eastern Michigan University. And as you know, I played junior college baseball before, so I went as a junior. And I remember the athletic dorm, I stayed in there for a few months until I joined a fraternity, which was great for me because I was so far from home, 1,200 miles from home. But I remember walking across the street to the special ed department. And because I was a water safety instructor even in high school. And so my major was physical education, my minor was psychology. So I walked in there, I started walking in because I was going to give swimming instruction to kids with spinal bifida, kids who couldn't speak, couldn't hear, which is the most difficult thing I ever did in my life. But I remember the first time I walked up to the school, it's called Rackham School, special ed school. And there was a lady who walked out with this little girl, couldn't be more than 3 feet tall, had braces from head to toe, neck to toe. And I looked, and I got tears in my eyes. Mm. And the lady says, "Are you a student?" And yes, ma'am. "Well, you stand here with this child. I've got to go in and get a couple more." So I just did what I was told. I stood there with her, and I picked the girl up. She light as a feather. Just picked her up. Had to hug her. Mm. And the lady came out again, and then I was crying. I said, "Man, how can you do this?" I was, getting emotional now. "How can you do this?" She says, "Well, it's a calling." And that right there, I knew that was someday I was going to teach and coach. And I wanted to make a difference with people, not just in athletics. I think that's the story. I think, and I was 20 years old. Wow! Just what a life change. Right?
Well, Mike, you certainly made a difference for the Florida half century, and this has been enlightening for me. We could probably talk for another hour, but you kind of got to wrap it up. Dano, why don't you take it home, man?
Mike, you're an interesting guy, and it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. You know what would you say that the top 3 keys are for success in life? You have a good background.
I think you have to have, number one, you have to have a religious relationship, I think. And I'm a Christian man, but I think spiritually a person has to be solid. Some people go to church 3 times a week, some people don't. So I don't think you don't have to go to church to be a great man, to be a great person, a great woman. But you want to treat people with respect. And all the old things we were taught, my grandfather's the one who took me to church. He's the one that I remember that took me to Little League baseball games. Took me to the local minor league baseball in Palatka, Florida. the Reds, Cincinnati Reds had a farm team there. But he would talk about the old, about treat people the way you want to be treated, basically. It's in the Bible. And I think consistency, being the same person all the time, and but there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of redneck in you. I laugh, and I've said this probably 1,000 times in my life. I'm probably the best educated redneck you ever met. There's, why I say that is never give up, and you have a little toughness. But it is like that. Never give up. It's not. Yogi Berra's got a great movie coming out. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, all athletes should be like that, man. You know, a lot of guys do that. They give up.
Yeah, and I never did. You didn't. You never did.
Yeah, well,
and I think those are the things to me, the spirituality and I'll tell you what, all the things I got to do as a player, as a coach, as a teacher, official, and have the same wife for 51 years. Not one time in all those years did she say, no, you got to stop something. And playing softball all over the place, 3 weekends a month, for years and years and years.
Yeah, you and I are lucky, buddy. Yeah. I've been together with my wife for 57 years.
There you go.
I beat you in something, Mike. So, Dano, let's wrap this thing up, dude. How we do this?
Hey, man, thanks a lot, Mike. You've been a great guest, and we look forward to meeting you again in the future. And
I'll come see you the next tournament, man.
All right, thank you. Let's go.
We're out.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.
Good job.
Yeah. Roger, get started. You do have 10,000 things to talk about.
Look at that, boy.